Imagine waking up in paradise. The sun is rising over crystal blue water. Palm trees sway in a gentle tropical breeze. You're on a massive battleship, the most powerful weapon your nation has ever built. You feel completely safe, completely untouchable. You have no idea that in exactly 48 minutes you'll be fighting for your life. And for over 1,000 of your shipmates, these are the last peaceful moments they'll ever experience. December 7th, 1941, 7 a.m., Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. It's Sunday morning. The Pacific Fleet sits peacefully at anchor. 8 battleships line up in pairs along what sailors call Battleship Row. USS Arizona, USS Oklahoma, USS West Virginia, USS California, USS Maryland, USS Tennessee, USS Nevada, USS Pennsylvania, 45,000 tons of steel and guns, each one a floating fortress, the pride of American naval power. Most sailors are still asleep. It's the weekend, no drills, no exercises, just a quiet Sunday morning in paradise. Some men are having breakfast in the mess halls, others are writing letters home. A few early risers walk the decks enjoying the sunrise. On nearby Ford Island, rows of aircraft sit parked wingtip to wingtip. Fighters, bombers, patrol planes, all perfectly lined up to save space, all completely exposed. At the harbor entrance, a destroyer spots something unusual, a small submarine periscope. They depth charge it and sink it. They report the contact. But nobody sounds a general alarm. Submarine sightings happen sometimes, probably nothing. The morning stays quiet. The fleet stays relaxed. Nobody knows that at this exact moment, 230 miles north of Oahu, 6 Japanese aircraft carriers have just launched 353 aircraft. Destination Pearl Harbor. Time to target 1 hour and 30 minutes, 7:02 a.m. Upon a point, northern tip of Oahu. 2 Army privates, Joseph Lockard and George Elliott, are manning a mobile radar station. It's new technology. Most officers don't really trust it yet. The 2 privates are supposed to shut down at 7 a.m., but Lockard wants more practice. So they keep the radar running. Suddenly, the scope lights up, the largest return they've ever seen. Lockard thinks the equipment is malfunctioning. He checks it. Everything's working perfectly. This is real, a massive formation of aircraft coming from the north. Distance, 137 miles, heading straight toward Oahu. Elliott wants to call it in immediately. Lockard agrees. This is huge. They phone the information center at Fort Shafter. A young lieutenant answers. He's only been in Hawaii a few weeks. Limited experience. They tell him, massive flight of aircraft approaching from the north. The lieutenant thinks for a moment. He remembers that a flight of B-17 bombers is expected from the mainland this morning. Coming from the same direction. That must be what the radar picked up. He tells the privates, don't worry about it. The privates insist this is way bigger than 12 bombers. The lieutenant is dismissive. Must be the B-17s, he says. Shut down your station. End of discussion. Lockard and Elliott look at each other. The blip on their screen is still there, still coming, growing larger. They've done their job. They reported it. If the information center doesn't care, there's nothing more they can do. They shut down the radar at 7:45 a.m. 3 minutes later, the first wave crosses the coast. 35 minutes of warning. Gone. Because one lieutenant made one assumption. One decision, one mistake, and now 2,400 Americans are about to die, 7:48 a.m. Commander Mitsuo Fuchida leads the first wave over Pearl Harbor. He looks down and can't believe what he sees. The entire Pacific Fleet laid out below him like a training exercise. 8 battleships at anchor, cruisers, destroyers. Rows of aircraft perfectly lined up on airfields. No fighters in the air, no anti-aircraft fire. No signs of alarm whatsoever. Complete surprise. Fuchida transmits 3 words back to the carrier fleet. Tora, Tora, Tora. Tiger, Tiger, Tiger. It's the code. It means we have achieved complete surprise. Every pilot hears it. The attack is on. No turning back now. History is about to change. The Japanese plan is methodical. First wave targets are the airfields. Why? Because if American fighters get airborne, they'll slaughter the slow-moving torpedo bombers. So the first priority is destroying American air power on the ground. Dive bombers peel off and head for Wheeler Field, Hickam Field, Bellows Field, Kaneohe Naval Air Station. Within minutes, American aircraft start exploding. Fighters, bombers, patrol planes. Pilots and ground crews run for cover as bullets tear through hangars. Fuel tanks erupt in flames. Machine gun fire rips through parked aircraft. By 8 a.m., most of America's air power in Hawaii is burning wreckage. Over 180 aircraft destroyed. Most never got off the ground. The few American pilots who managed to get airborne fight heroically, but they're outnumbered 20-1. Now comes the main event, the torpedo bombers. This is Yamamoto's master stroke. Normal aerial torpedoes don't work in Pearl Harbor. The water is too shallow. Standard torpedoes dive deep after hitting the water, then level out. In Pearl Harbor's 40-foot depths, they just bury themselves in the mud. Yamamoto knew this. So Japanese engineers spent months developing special shallow-running torpedoes. Wooden fins, modified propellers, designed specifically for Pearl Harbor's conditions, and they work perfectly. 7:55 a.m. The first bombs fall on Battleship Row. Then the torpedo bombers come. Nakajima B-5 N-Kate bombers sweep in low over the water, 50 feet above the surface. American sailors watch in confusion. Some think it's a drill. A really realistic drill with planes painted to look Japanese. Then the first torpedo hits USS Oklahoma. Massive explosion, water erupts, the ship shudders. Sailors realize this is real, this is war, and they're under attack. Oklahoma takes a second torpedo, then a third, fourth, fifth. 5 torpedoes slam into her port side in less than 10 minutes. The battleship starts to roll. Inside the ship, it's chaos. The lights go out. Water rushes in. The deck tilts at impossible angles. Watertight doors slam shut automatically, trapping men in compartments. Sailors scramble up ladders that are becoming horizontal as the ship capsizes. Imagine being deep inside Oklahoma when she starts rolling. You're in the engine room, or a magazine, or sleeping quarters. The ship tilts. Water pours in. You try to reach a hatch, but the ship is turning upside down. Gravity shifts. What was a floor becomes a wall. What was a wall becomes a ceiling. The water is rising. It's pitch black. You can hear other men screaming, metal groaning. The horrible sound of a 40,000-ton ship dying. Oklahoma capsizes completely in 12 minutes. 12 minutes from first hit to completely overturned. The ship settles upside down on the harbor bottom with hundreds of men trapped inside. Some are in air pockets, still alive, pounding on the hull, hoping someone will hear them, hoping someone will cut through the steel before the air runs out. Some will be rescued over the next 36 hours. 32 men will be pulled out alive. But 429 men will die inside Oklahoma, trapped, drowned. Gone while Oklahoma is capsizing, USS Arizona fights back. Anti-aircraft guns open fire. Sailors man their battle stations. The ship's marine detachment grabs rifles and shoots at low-flying aircraft. Arizona is moored next to the repair ship Vestal. Both ships are taking fire. Bombs, bullets, near misses that throw up massive water columns. Then at 8:06 a.m., everything changes. A modified 16-inch battleship shell, converted into an armor-piercing bomb, falls from a dive bomber. It punches through Arizona's deck near Turret 2. The bomb penetrates deep into the ship before exploding, and it detonates right next to the forward ammunition magazines. What happens next is one of the most catastrophic explosions in naval history. Arizona's forward magazines hold over 1 million pounds of gunpowder. Black powder, smokeless powder, shells, torpedoes. Everything needed to keep the ship's massive guns firing. When that armor-piercing bomb ignites those magazines, it's not an explosion. It's a cataclysm. The blast is so powerful it lifts Arizona's 45,000-ton hull completely out of the water. Witnesses on nearby ships describe seeing the entire forward section of Arizona simply cease to exist. The forward turrets, which weigh over 1,000 tons each, are blown off the ship. One lands in the water. One collapses into the massive crater where the bow used to be. A fireball rises hundreds of feet into the air. Black smoke, orange flames, debris raining down across the harbor. The explosion is so massive that people on the other side of Oahu feel it. A thunderclap that rattles windows miles away. On nearby Vestal, sailors are thrown off their feet by the shockwave. Some are blown into the water. The ship itself is lifted and slammed back down. Men on Ford Island watch Arizona's bow disintegrate. They can't believe what they're seeing. An entire battleship just exploded, just ceased to exist. The forward explosion kills over 1,000 men instantly. Most never knew what hit them. They were at their battle stations, loading guns, fighting fires, doing their jobs. Then a flash of light and they're gone, vaporized, incinerated, lost in the blast. The rear half of Arizona is still intact, but it's flooding rapidly. The ship settles on the harbor bottom. Smoke and flames pour from the wreckage. Of the 1,400 men aboard Arizona that morning, 1,177 are dead. USS Arizona will never sail again. She sits on the harbor bottom to this day, a war memorial, a tomb for over 900 sailors still entombed inside her shattered hull. Up and down Battleship Row, it's absolute chaos. USS West Virginia takes 7 torpedoes. Her captain is killed early in the attack. Her executive officer takes command and orders counterflooding to prevent capsizing. The ship settles upright on the bottom instead of rolling over like Oklahoma. But 106 men still die. USS California takes 2 torpedoes. She starts flooding, but the crew keeps fighting. They man anti-aircraft guns even as the ship is sinking beneath them. California will settle on the harbor bottom with the superstructure still above water. Then there's USS Nevada. She's the only battleship with steam up. The officer of the deck sees what's happening and makes a decision: try to escape. Nevada's crew casts off lines and the battleship starts moving. Slowly at first, then picking up speed, she heads for the harbor entrance. For a few minutes it looks like she might make it. American sailors on other ships cheer. At least one battleship is getting out, but Japanese pilots see Nevada moving. They focus everything on her. Dive bombers, horizontal bombers. They don't want Nevada blocking the harbor entrance by sinking in the channel. Bombs rain down on Nevada. The ship takes hit after hit. Fires break out. The forward deck is a mess of twisted metal and flames. The captain realizes they won't make it. If Nevada sinks in the channel, she'll trap the entire fleet inside Pearl Harbor. He orders the ship beached. Nevada runs herself aground near Hospital Point. Still floating, still fighting, but out of the channel. The passage stays clear. Nevada's crew fought like hell. They didn't escape. But they kept the harbor open. And that decision will prove crucial in the days ahead. 8:54 a.m. The second wave arrives, 170 aircraft. These pilots have a different mission. The first wave targeted operational ships and aircraft. The second wave focuses on what survives and on infrastructure. Anything that can be used to rebuild the fleet. Dry docks, machine shops, fuel storage tanks, ammunition depots, power plants, repair facilities. The pilots also hit ships that survived the first wave. California takes more bombs. West Virginia gets hit again. Nevada, beached and burning, gets hit repeatedly. Pennsylvania in dry dock takes several bombs. The destroyers Cassin and Downs, also in dry dock, are destroyed. Anti-aircraft fire is much heavier now. American gunners have recovered from the initial shock. They're fighting back hard. Tracers fill the sky. Shells burst around Japanese aircraft. Several planes go down in flames, but the damage continues. More bombs, more explosions. More fires, more death. The second wave also makes a critical error, one that will haunt Japan for the rest of the war. The massive fuel storage tanks on the hills above Pearl Harbor. Millions of gallons of petroleum, enough to power the entire Pacific Fleet for months. The tanks sit exposed, unprotected, easy targets. If those tanks are destroyed, the Pacific Fleet would have to retreat to California. Pearl Harbor would be useless as a forward base. American operations in the Pacific would be crippled for a year or more. But the second wave commander decides not to target the fuel tanks. Why? Because they're already behind schedule. American anti-aircraft fire is getting accurate. They've lost the element of surprise. Better to finish assigned targets and get out, so the fuel tanks survive, untouched. Later, Admiral Yamamoto will call this one of Japan's biggest mistakes of the entire war. Those fuel tanks kept Pearl Harbor operational, kept the Pacific Fleet supplied, made the American comeback possible. 10 a.m. It's over. The last Japanese aircraft turn north and head back to their carriers. The sound of explosions and aircraft engines fades. What's left is eerie silence broken only by crackling fires, groaning metal, and the cries of wounded men. Pearl Harbor is a vision of hell. Black smoke rises thousands of feet into the air. Oil burning on the water. Ships capsized or sinking. Bodies floating in the harbor. Wounded sailors being pulled from the water. Rescue teams searching through wreckage for survivors. The smell of burning oil, cordite, and death hangs heavy over everything. The numbers are staggering. 8 battleships sunk or damaged, 3 cruisers hit, 3 destroyers damaged, 188 aircraft destroyed. Most never got off the ground. Another 159 damaged, 2,403 Americans dead, 1,178 wounded. The U.S. Pacific Fleet is crippled. From a purely military standpoint, the Japanese attack was a stunning success. They achieved complete surprise, lost only 29 aircraft, destroyed or damaged most of America's Pacific battleship force, accomplished nearly every objective. Japanese pilots return to their carriers jubilant. They've done the impossible, struck the American giant and survived. But aboard the flagship Akagi, Admiral Nagumo faces a decision. His staff officers are arguing. Some want to launch a third wave, go back and finish the job, hit the fuel tanks, destroy the repair facilities completely. Hunt for the American carriers that weren't in port. Others argue they've pushed their luck far enough. American defenses are fully alert now. They lost the element of surprise. Better to withdraw while they're ahead. Nagumo makes his choice. They're leaving. No third wave. The strike force turns north and heads back to Japan. They've accomplished their mission, destroyed the battleship fleet. Bought time for Japan's expansion into Southeast Asia. Now they need to get home safely. The carriers are too valuable to risk. The decision is made. The attack is over. But on Oahu, the nightmare continues. Sailors and civilians across the island rush to Pearl Harbor to help. Doctors and nurses, shipyard workers, Marines, soldiers, anyone who can assist. They pull wounded men from the water, fight fires on burning ships, search wreckage for survivors, cut through steel to reach trapped sailors. On Oklahoma, rescue crews can hear men pounding on the hull from inside. The ship is upside down on the bottom. Men are trapped in air pockets, still alive, hoping, praying. Rescue workers use cutting torches to burn through the hull. It takes hours. The steel is thick. The metal is hot from fires, but they keep working. They cut through and find survivors. 32 men are pulled out alive from inside Oklahoma over the next 36 hours. 32 miracles. Men who should have died, who would have died if rescuers had given up. But hundreds more are dead, trapped in compartments that flooded, or spaces with no air pockets, or places rescuers couldn't reach in time. The hospital at Pearl Harbor is overwhelmed, wounded everywhere. Doctors performing surgery in hallways, nurses working without rest. Blood-soaked bandages, the smell of antiseptic and burnt flesh, the sounds of men crying out in pain. The most serious cases are sent to civilian hospitals in Honolulu. The whole island mobilizes to help. Hotels offer rooms for displaced sailors. Restaurants provide free food. Citizens donate blood. Line up for hours to help. In the midst of horror and tragedy, there's also humanity. People helping people, strangers becoming heroes. America showing what it's made of even on the worst day in its naval history. Here's what Japanese pilots didn't destroy. What they couldn't find. What would prove far more important than all those sunken battleships. America's aircraft carriers. Enterprise, Lexington, and Saratoga were all at sea on December 7th. They escaped completely. And carriers, as the coming war will prove, matter far more than battleships. In 1941, military strategists still thought battleships were the backbone of naval power. The big guns, the armor, the prestige. Carriers were seen as support vessels, useful for scouting and air cover but not decisive in major battles. But World War II in the Pacific will be a carrier war. The great battles, Coral Sea, Midway, Philippine Sea, will be decided by aircraft carriers. The battleships that survive Pearl Harbor will be relegated to shore bombardment and convoy escort. Not useless, but not decisive either. The fact that American carriers escaped Pearl Harbor means the U.S. Pacific Fleet isn't actually crippled. It's wounded, but it still has teeth, and those teeth will bite back hard. Within 6 months at the Battle of Midway, those American carriers will sink 4 Japanese carriers. The same carriers that launched the Pearl Harbor attack. Revenge will be swift and total. When Admiral Yamamoto learns that the attack succeeded, his staff expects celebration. But Yamamoto doesn't celebrate. He asks one question: were the aircraft carriers destroyed? The answer: no, they weren't in port. Yamamoto's face falls. The carriers escaped. That's a problem. Then he learns that the fuel tanks weren't destroyed. The repair facilities mostly survived. The harbor infrastructure is intact, and he knows. He spent too much time in America, saw too much of American industrial power, understands American psychology too well. Japan has achieved a tactical victory, but they may have just lost the strategic war. There's a famous quote attributed to Yamamoto after Pearl Harbor. "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve." Whether he actually said those exact words is debated, but historians agree the sentiment matches what Yamamoto believed. He knew attacking America was a desperate gamble. He hoped it would force negotiations. Now he knows it did the opposite. 110 minutes, less than 2 hours. That's how long it took to change world history. Pearl Harbor transformed America from a reluctant neutral to a fully mobilized war machine. Over the next 4 years, American industrial power will produce 300,000 aircraft, 86,000 tanks, thousands of ships, millions of tons of supplies, all while also supporting Britain, Russia, and other allies. The sleeping giant is awake, and it's angry. Japan hoped one surprise attack would force America to negotiate. Instead, they guaranteed that America would fight until Japan was completely defeated. Unconditional surrender. That became the goal. Nothing less would be acceptable. Pearl Harbor is remembered as a day of infamy. A surprise attack. A tragedy, but it's also a lesson about the danger of miscalculation, about underestimating your enemy, about assuming others will react rationally to your actions. Japan bet everything on one assumption, that America would choose peace over war. They were catastrophically wrong. And those 110 minutes at Pearl Harbor set in motion events that would destroy the Japanese Empire. The next video in this series reveals how America was caught so completely off guard. Despite warning signs, despite intelligence, despite radar detection, multiple failures that allowed the attack to succeed. How did the most powerful fleet in the Pacific get surprised by an attack everyone should have seen coming? That answer will shock you. Part 3 drops in 48 hours. If you've made it this far, you're serious about understanding history. Not just dates and facts, but the real stories. The decisions, the mistakes, the human cost. This channel is built for people like you. So if you want the rest of this series, all 15 videos covering the complete Pacific War from start to finish, hit that subscribe button right now. Because the next video reveals intelligence failures that could have prevented Pearl Harbor. And you won't want to miss it. Until then, remember Pearl Harbor, not just as a tragedy, but as a lesson about the consequences of miscalculation, about the price of war, and about why understanding your enemy matters more than military might.